Yes, science, as the presiding officer, is the key to Scotland's future prosperity, central to our understanding of the world, the gateway to many employment opportunities, and endlessly fascinating and exciting. Yet, for many, it is a closed book and an unknown world. Some people perhaps were turned off science at school, while others may be stuck in a two cultures time warp, precisely 50 years after C.P. Snow's landmark lecture. Whatever the reason, science should be for all and for life. Of course, not everyone is going to be a scientist, but everyone should have a basic understanding of science, and everyone should be able to engage as a stakeholder in the many science-related issues and debates which confront us all. Key to all of this, of course, is what happens at school, and I welcome the marketing strategy which the Cabinet Secretary launched at Trinity Academy in my constituency a few weeks ago. But I am sure she will agree with me that central to all this is the curriculum and the teachers themselves. I believe that science should have core status within the curriculum, as it has in England, in addition to literacy and numeracy. It should be far more prominent in primary schools and must be central, of course, as well to the secondary school curriculum. We should all be concerned at the findings of the recent Timms report that Scotland is falling behind, particularly in the primary 5 to secondary 2 age bracket. One reason, of course, is that very few primary teachers have a science background. One way, and action has already been taken at some schools in my constituency to deal with this, by linking up primary schools with secondary school science teachers. I think also, however, that the Government should look seriously at the suggestions by the former Chief Inspector Jack Jackson, who suggested a new cohort of science teachers working across the primary-secondary interface, and he also floated the ideas of a 20% quota of primary teachers in training to have science degrees, and also the idea that primary teachers should be taught science as part of their university training. So I think that must be very seriously looked at.
Member for giving way. You might be interested to inform that Professor Jack Jackson inspired me. He was my biology teacher at school, and he also has provided great advice in taking forward the Science Education Summit that we are holding in May, and perhaps some of these views can be developed in practice.
Well, I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that welcome information. As others have indicated, good quality CPD for science is also crucial for primary teachers as well as secondary teachers, and I know good programmes are available from the Scottish Schools Equipment Research Centre. I think CPD is particularly urgent at the current time for secondary teachers because of curriculum for excellence. One of the factors in the genesis of curriculum for excellence was the need to do something about science in secondary 1 and 2, but there is a big concern, most clearly articulated a few months ago by the Royal Society of Edinburgh, about the science part of the curriculum for excellence. I know it has moved on since then, but I think it would be good to hear from the Cabinet Secretary where that debate has got to, because in summary, the Royal Society of Edinburgh, while positive about the underlying principles of curriculum for excellence and broadly supportive of its defined learning outcomes, was very concerned that in the rush to cross-disciplinary working, insufficient attention would be paid to the building blocks of the individual subject disciplines. They also indicated that there was a danger of different agendas across Scotland without a common understanding of the structure of the curriculum. So I would welcome the Cabinet Secretary's comments on where that has got to following her discussions with the Royal Society of Edinburgh. Now, of course, what happens in higher education is equally important, and indeed, when it comes to making or exploiting leading-edge innovation, is more important than what happens in schools. Now, the big worry here is how Scotland can match increasing resources coming to English universities for scientific research and indeed other areas. Now, as our amendment indicates, UK-level integration is important here, and UK Research Council funding, and I think the strategy should address how we maximise the benefit of that. But there is still, of course, the wider issue of university funding, and I do think that sooner or later the Scottish Government is going to have to initiate a major review of that, as was called for again by Professor Brian Lang at the cross-party group on universities last week. Now, of course, equally important or related to all this is the effect of science on the wider economy, and the Cabinet Secretary flagged up some of the problems when, for example, she pointed out the low levels of business expenditure on R&D. And I think central to the science framework are pages 8 and 9, where it lists actions mainly by Scottish Enterprise and Highlands and Islands Enterprise in this area, for example, supporting science-based business innovation and many other actions. So I do hope that those will be implemented with a great deal of urgency. Now, we shouldn't get too depressed. We should recognise the progress that has been made in terms of connecting the universities with business, as Linda Fabiani highlighted in her speech. And we should also, of course, recognise the great successes over the last years, particularly in relation to the life sciences. So what we need to do, particularly in these difficult economic times, is to build on those solid foundations. Dundee's success is often quoted, but Edinburgh has also made great strides, and perhaps further development of the life sciences is particularly important for Edinburgh now that financial services are under such pressure. In conclusion, can I welcome the summit that will take place very soon in relation to this. I obviously welcome the fact that Jack Jackson is there, but I hope it will be as inclusive as possible, and I don't know whether they have been invited, but perhaps opposition spokespeople could be invited to that.